What's up, you scallywags? Today we are talking about level 2, reading level 2. This is a lesson I am going to teach right now, and it might not come out smooth until later on into the class, but we're going to talk about something I have learned about level 2, because I had a student the other day talking about how he keeps buying every time he sees a big buyer, okay? And then he gets in, and then the buyer gets the order gets eaten up and taken out of the way, and he keeps losing. And I said, okay, yes, I understand. And on the flip side, he said every time he sees a big seller, he cuts it right away, and then all to see the price rip through that big seller and pop through. The one thing I have learned, this is like a little kind of almost like a secret, and it took time for me to learn this, to actually experience it. This big buyer, this big seller, is it always an indication to sell or an indication to buy? And the answer is no. Sometimes yes, okay? And in the stream, and especially while we're trading 50-50 and the information's popping up quickly, I will call out big seller, big buyer, and sometimes I buy because of this big buyer, big seller that maybe I only saw momentarily, but because I saw it, I made a quick decision. But that doesn't mean that every time I see a big buyer that I buy or I hold. Because in fact, sometimes, right, this, if you don't understand anything else from this lesson, and in a little bit we're going to go back to my computer. Right now I'm at the park, about a half hour away from home, but we're going to go to the computer. I'm going to show you a live example of this. But these big buyers and these big sellers oftentimes are targets. Meaning that sometimes when I see a big seller and I'm still holding a position, I will actually hold, and I will actually see that seller as a target, a sign. I will actually like to see it, right? Because of a couple reasons. One is because oftentimes orders are hidden. Okay, and you don't even see all the orders that are up on the bid and the ask, because these guys, these big traders, will put hidden orders up. And so when we actually do see some substantial shares on the level 2, it brings this idea of excitement, as if there's action, as if this price level is interesting and important, and it becomes a target. Okay, and this happens especially at key levels. And this is an instance where if I see a big seller at a key area that I would expect a seller to be, I don't bail out right away when I see that. I like to see that in a healthy area. Maybe it's not to the penny, but if we're coming up to maybe high of day or a pivot or a key level, maybe a daily chart level, and there's a big seller there, some people may actually think, oh, I got to get out. There's a big seller, where I like to at least hold it, because I know that buyers are going to want to attack that. They see a big wall there that you would think, we don't usually see a sell order that large in that particular stock, right? That's what I'm talking about, a large order, and they become targets to attack, right? You see 300 pop up on the level 2, and pretty soon you see it go to 250, 200, 150. That creates a perfect, almost like a countdown timer to a breakout. And so on the flip side, if you see a big buyer at an area where you expect support, one would think, oh, that's a great indication to buy. What I have actually learned, okay, and this is not true for every case, but oftentimes when I see a big buyer at key levels, I used to buy. I'd say, hey, there's 30,000 shares here at $2, whole dollar level, previous high a day. This should hold. And what would happen, I'd get in, it would hold for a second, all of a sudden that buyer would get eaten up, and it would snap. Right, and that's another key aspect, is how after you have these breaks through these key levels, you do get usually a snap, and that's what makes these targets, especially when they're in key areas of support or resistance. So don't allow that, because I know there is some traders that they are paying attention to abnormally large buy and sell orders, okay, above average. I shouldn't say abnormal, but you know what I mean, where we're used to maybe seeing 3,000, 5,000 shares, and all of a sudden we see 40,000. That's a big buyer. And again, this is all relative, and we're going to get to my computer in a second. But don't let that be you, because here is when it's a little bit different. Okay, it's a little bit different when you have, say, for example, a breakthrough high day, key level, maybe that was $2 a share. You get the pop through it, it's a bull flag, and you're expecting a breakout. Okay, what happens when all of a sudden the price drops really quickly, false breakout, flush starting, and all of a sudden a big, large order pops up on the ask? Okay, that is no longer the same situation as before, where a big seller popped up in a key area while we were pushing that level, while there was strength. All right, now the situation is, and you have to think in your head, price breaks through a key level, we get that pop. Okay, 50-50 states sell on the break of the apex point, no adding, right? That's not a part of that. It's buy, mark it in, mark it out. That's 50-50, right? But for example, say you were trying to break out of 50-50 a little bit and try to push it a little bit, price breaks through, drops down, and then a seller pops up. That's bad. Okay, that's a sell indication. That's not something you would say like, oh, it's a target, I'm gonna try to hold. That's something where it's like, we had the break, we had the orgasm, if you will. I know that that's I use that on my stream. A lot of people don't like that word. And then all of a sudden you expect a breakout, and all of a sudden you get this unexpected drop, and then a big seller. That's not good. Okay, same thing on the reverse, and this helps for buying those reversals, is waiting for the big buyer to get eaten up, right? Because he is a target. I'm not going to get in until I know that that target has been, that break, that orgasm has happened, and then I'm going to get in. That's the whole point of the false breakdown setup. Okay, and then what we love to see, we don't always see it, but if we have the breakdown, short sellers have their turn, and then all of a sudden the price bounces up quickly, and then a big bid pops up. Now that is something where it's like, okay, this buyer here is no longer really a target. It's more of a curveball. Okay, and these curveballs are very common. Okay, very common. It's, in fact, I talk about how we didn't expect a seller to come in. Break of apex points are a great spot for a sudden change of direction. Okay, and I've really, over the last couple of years, have learned to gravitate to those kind of trades. Okay, traditionally I was 50-50 hyper scalping, which I still do, which is still the foundation. But again, I have evolved as other 50-50 traders have evolved. Some of my first students, well known in the industry, great guys. So some people, are not doing as much of this holding through key levels and waiting. So, but unfortunately, because 50-50 kind of is going viral in the low float momentum community, and that has been the case since I've taught my first group of people who so happen to be really plugged into another big community, and also we're doing great job advertising. So now it's all big. But anyways, so you guys get my point. We're gonna go to my computer right now. We're just gonna show you example, because I was talking about this. In our live stream this morning, or depending on when I post this, it might have been yesterday or a week before. And we're just going to show an example of this. And it's just a simple point, guys. Big buyers and big sellers, it does not always equal a sell or a buy signal. It depends on how it happens. A big buyer in a place you would expect it to be is a target for short sellers to attack and break. A big seller, who you would think is a sell indication for buyers who are holding, if he's in a logical area of resistance, maybe high day, maybe a pivot level, that doesn't spook the market. What spooks the market is when there's a large buyer or seller in places where you don't expect. All right, so here we go. Here's a recording of this morning where I talked exactly about this instance where we see a big buyer, and we're not buying because we see this big buyer as a target, not as a reason to buy. And I fell into this as a lot of traders do as beginners. They see a big buyer and they automatically think I should buy. Okay, as we're talking about for this lesson, it depends where these big buyers are. If they come in as in unexpected places. You get the bounce price. Maybe the price was dropping, and then you get a bounce back up, and then a big buyer comes in and starts walking it up. That's a little bit different than, say, there's a big buyer at an area where we would expect it. In this case, we have what looks like possibly a flush upcoming. Okay, bear flag here. It's about to resolve through the pivot here at 116. Okay. So we would suspect that we'd have support here. We also have, proof here. It bounced right here, bounced here again. So we know there's support. And sure enough, now we have a big buyer, and he's probably trying to hold it back up. Maybe it's somebody who thought they could get this W pattern here, but then it's starting to fail right here. Who knows? Whatever the case, we see this big buyer, and I call it out in this instance. This is where I'm saying, hey guys, I am not going to buy, even though that's a big buyer. See here how this is 200, okay, and then this is 1,500. This is 10 times bigger. Okay, so in this case, we clearly have visually more buyers at this level than sellers, but still, yeah, even though it's holding, I'm still not buying. Look at how I'm circling it in real time, talking about this as a target. And usually when these big walls break, they break fast and hard. This one didn't. And in fact, it did come in to try to buy it after that wall broke. And that's usually where I do want to buy, is to wait for that target to break and then buy. How many times have you bought because you saw a big buyer, and then the big buyer gets sold into, it drops, you stop out, and then it comes back? Okay, that's a common theme. That's why I learned over the years to wait for that target to basically be eaten up and then go in. Okay, same on the inverse. Okay, when I see a big seller at a key level, maybe up at a pivot level, say, for example, if you follow my mouse here, we got a pivot up here at about $1.45. Okay, and I see a big seller there. Some people may think, okay, that's an indication to sell. But actually, because it's in an expected area, what that does is more experienced traders are not spooked by it. Okay, some of the other traders are spooked. Okay, of course, anything can happen, and sometimes it does just reject as soon as we see that big seller. But oftentimes, the market at least likes to test those big orders. They act as magnets, targets, and when they break, they snap, and so they become attractive for this whole reason entirely. And so once you start to learn the dynamic, instead of just bailing out every time you see a big seller and then jumping in every time you see a big buyer, as you get experience, you start to know when is a good time to actually act upon a big buyer or a big seller, or to word it better, what the right decision. That could be to get into a trade. That could be to get out of a trade. That could be to hold the trade. That could be to take no trade, right? So there's like 5 options, and so if you have questions, okay, leave them in the comments. I just wanted to show this because this was a great example that I called out this morning of a big buyer, a visually abnormally large relative buyer bid compared to sellers on the level 2. And even though that was there, I still did not buy because of this exact principle. And guess what? It actually saved me from probably taking a loss there, and then watch it come back up, bounces back up a little bit. Maybe I get back in. And if I remember right, this pattern ends up failing. Look, yeah, so you can see it here, ends up failing. So anyways, guys, that's just a quick lesson of today. Level 2 reading. Okay. Very important in my opinion. And this is just something I've learned over the years, and I'm giving it out there for free. So please hit the like button, share this channel with a friend. Lord have mercy. With that said, guys, I will see you in the next video. Peace.